Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fifth day for our online July summit. Hi, Gertrude.
Good to be here, Ruth. We are on day 5 of this amazing summit. It's good to see you again.
Yes, so
How
we
are
are
you?
halfway across. We are halfway to the finishing mark.
Yeah, halfway. It's been an amazing 10 days listening to all of these amazing speakers from all over the world. So
True.
it's really exciting that we're on the halfway mark, exposing some phenomenal
Yeah.
stories. Every day when we come on, we are just surprised at how many women are out there who have fascinating stories to share. So
True.
let us begin. We have our first speaker is Jackie
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Jackie Layton comes from West Lake Village in California, and she has a company called Speakertunity, where they help authors, speakers, coaches to get leads and get booked to speak on radio and on podcast shows, as well as getting booked to get onto the TED platform. So I met Jackie a few years ago, and you know me, I'm always on a quest to find smart people who can help me get out there as a speaker, leverage off the opportunities that are available, especially online now with COVID. There's a lot of work for female speakers in particular. Because of the need for diversity and inclusion, most organizations are targeting women to come into their organizations and give presentations and talks. So that's how I met Jackie. She actually connected me to my second TED Talk was through her organization. And I've now been working with them and tapping into their database for all of my coaching clients who also want to get on TED. And I guess the importance of getting on TED is you get global visibility, you are noticed all over the world, and that's what every speaker is actually looking for. It's, am I being seen? Who's out there in the world who can hire me to come in and facilitate for workshops and be a keynote speaker at their conferences and events? So we'll share Jackie's video first and then go on to the rest of our amazing lineup of speakers. So this is Jackie Layton. Thank you so much, Jackie, for being a part of our movement.
I'm Jackie Layton, and I'm so delighted to be here today as part of the Herstory Summit. I think Gertrude is one of the most powerful, incredible women in our entire world. She has done so much for women who want to tell their stories powerfully and to help give folks a leg up in the world if they need a little bit of help in getting started or just improving their lives altogether. Gertrude, my hat's off to you, love. And she is an icon of women who are vulnerable and honest and willing to tell their stories. And she encourages me to really come forth with some of the reasons that I am making the difference that I am in the world. So my mission is to help leaders get on stages, whatever those stages might be, so that you can tell your story and you can help other people. But my story begins when I am just about 4 years old. And my father came home, and you can imagine hearing this. He says to my mom, "Honey, I have to tell you this. I have cancer, the same kind of cancer that killed my parents." Well, you can imagine what that did to a 4-year-old to hear this tragic. At 4, I knew what cancer was. And I knew that people didn't always survive. Obviously, my grandparents were gone. So I was terrified. But the good news is my father survived. But the bad news again was that he was financially wiped out. Now, when that happened, he had no choice but to start over and wanted to move us to another part of the state just to get a new foothold in the world. And he did, but there was only one problem. This part of the state was very, very unwelcoming, let's just say. They didn't like outsiders. Have you ever felt that like yourself? Do you know what that experience is like? I'll bet you have. And as a result, even the kids were like that. And they didn't want anything to do with me. My childhood was spent almost entirely alone. Whew. As I grew up, I wanted something that made me feel visible, validated. I felt that I had no voice, that these children and their parents had silenced me, that I had no validation in the world. And so I was a Wild Dodger fan. I got that from my dad. And I loved writing. And listening to my intuitive sense, even way back as a child, I said, I'm going to put these two things together. And I am going to become a sports writer. Now, back when that happened, there were no women sports writers. And so I didn't listen to all the people who said, you're kidding. She'll never succeed. She's a girl. I didn't listen to that. And you can imagine my whole peer group, they already thought that I was weird, that I was different. But I really put my heart and soul into it. And so I read the LA Times every single day to learn how to become a writer. And I geared myself in high school and college to do this. And so I believe that success is the best revenge. At 20, I was at the Detroit Free Press. At 21, I was on the front pages of the Los Angeles Times and at the Associated Press. At 22, I'd co-hosted the television show Dodger Dugout here in Los Angeles. And I went to the Washington Post. So you can imagine that was really extraordinary. I, in fact, even made national television because I was so early in the game and one of the few women who really was talented as a sports writer as young as I was. So that was really an exciting time and validation. So then the next part of my journey is I wanted to have a sports public relations agency. And you can bet what those other guys, and they were all guys, said about this female interloper into their business. Ha! She'll never make it. Well, within the next couple of years, I had a client list that was world class. Avon, Seagram's, Showtime, the Ice Capades, the Harlem Globetrotters, the National Hockey League, the Golf Channel. And I can go on and on and on and on with companies and organizations and sports entities that we represented during that time. And we also became one of the two leading PR agencies in cable television as that was emerging in pay-per-view. Oh yeah, and I also was in boxing and poker, if you can imagine. I launched the worldwide poker phenomenon with the World Poker Tour. So my story is one of triumph, of coming through all of that, despite the naysayers. And when I got through all of that, I realized that my heart really lay with the people who were making the world a better place. I wrote 2 books in personal growth on my own and realized that these were my kin, the people who were using their books to improve people's lives or help the businesses, or they were in service to humanity somehow. And so I decided to really focus my world on that. And so for about 12 years, we've done radio podcast tours where we introduce authors and leaders to 9,000 radio shows and podcasts with a minimum guarantee of 30 interviews. And I'm proud to say that some of my clients are Don Miguel Ruiz, Ariel Ford, James Twyman, Joe Vitale, Chris and Janet Atwood, Maureen St. Germain, and people who really are the leaders in the personal growth space, the luminaries. But also, if you go to our website, you'd see 80 other testimonials. We've done this for about 300 people over the course of the last couple of years. But about 4 or 5 years ago, some folks said to me, "Can you book me for speaking gigs?" And we said, "No, we don't want to do that, but we know where they are." And so I created something called Speakertunity, the Speaker and Leader Resource Company. And that's where we provide leaders all the contacts so they don't have to do any of the research, so they can get booked on live and virtual stages, on podcasts, on radio shows, on virtual summits, on TEDx's, and lots more, and conferences. We've also got conferences now coming. So we sorted them all, curated them for you. We've got 130,000 different listings in our regional directories. So people just want to learn and find out how to speak locally, or in their niche directories all across the world. So this became so important to me, to give people the opportunity and the tools and the resources to get on stages, because I want you to be able to deliver your messages in all the places that it counts, wherever you can come into contact with the people that are meaningful to you. So if you're not speaking, I want to tell you what the 10 reasons why speaking is so powerful and essential for leaders and entrepreneurs and coaches. This means that you really need to be thinking seriously about getting off the dime and going out and speak. And let me tell you why that it's really important for you to do this. And these are the 10 powerful reasons why. The first is that you want to grow your authority and the recognition factor for the work that you do in the world. You can grow your status so that not only it makes it more likely that people will book you, but that prospective clients will come to you because they know who you are. It increases your stature, your impact, and your attractability factor, your ability to attract clients for you. Now, that's the first one. It just really makes you a sought after expert in your marketplace. Now, the next one is that by speaking in a room with people, you create an intimacy, a kind of connection to them, a rapport that instills the know, like, and trust factor into the equation. This is where when people can see you, they are much more likely to want more from you, to buy from you, whether it's a book, whether it's a coaching program, whatever it is. Being in a virtual room or a live room with people really gives them a sense of knowing you, of feeling you, of having an emotion about who you are. And that builds a rapport for the relationship to follow. It increases your potential success rate. Most authors will know that the most successful strategies for them are being in a room with people who will buy their book. The same is true of pretty much anything else. The third thing that I really like about speaking is it gives you anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes to reinforce the audience's pain points and that you have a solution for it. It gives you an opportunity to slowly grow the fact that, well, here's what you're suffering from, and here's how I can help you, by giving them some taste of what they can experience with you when they're in a more formalized relationship, by offering valued content up front without them having to pay for it. They begin to really get a sense that, wow, I worked with this person, that I would have more I'm getting here. It's a real powerful positioning and gateway to sales. So number 4, if you have a really powerful rags to riches story, some human interest, like I just told you my story and that we are all doing here on Herstory, if you have a powerful story of where you have come from and where you are now, so that you can show people the promised land, how to get there. That is really a valuable benefit to being on stages. By telling your story, people see themselves in you, and they're going to want more from you because they trust you, they feel you, they identify with you. So I really believe that it gives you the time to make them invest with you as well as you investing with them. So number 5. So many people who shy away from the stage do so because they're afraid that they're going to sound salesy. And the truth of the matter is that's not necessarily a way that anybody needs to actually bring themselves forth on stage. The truth of the matter is you can create an invitation, an offer, and invite people to see that you would help them to their next stage. Okay, so I've given you this little bit of information. Now, would it be helpful to go to here? Well, let me invite you to come along with me, and I will help you there. So if you are doing it with the gentle, more feminine approach of invitation, this should not be an intimidation factor why you shouldn't get on stages. If you don't know how to do this yourself, there are wonderful teachers out there who can help you learn how to enroll from the stage as opposed to sell from the stage. When I talk about enroll, I'm also talking about getting people to opt into a free gift, not necessarily one that's paid, because some stages won't let you do that won't let you make a sales or offer presentation from the stage. They only will let you do a free gift. And if you do that free gift right, you're going to have lots and lots of people that come into your opt-in list. You start building the relationship, and then you can make the offer to them after they're in your community. So, number 6, speaking is a great way to test what will move an audience to action. You know, the nice thing about starting on local stages, smaller stages, organizations you're already associated with, is that you can see what's going to work. You know, your first presentation may not get a lot of response, but if you go home and tweak it and work it a little bit more and ask people what they thought, you're going to actually dial it in. And speaking gives you that opportunity to do that many times in a situation that is not necessarily do or die. You know, most people understand if you're honest and vulnerable and authentic with them, they'll understand if you're not a polished professional, that you're still just trying to make it work. And you'll get a lot of feedback from people to be able to see what works. Here's number 7. There are thousands and thousands of stages out there. Before the pandemic, they estimated there was 6,500 live stages a day in the US and Canada. Now, there are way more than that. They're well over 10,000, and they're live and they're virtual, and some of them are hybrid, so that you'll be in the room presenting to that group, but it's on live stream. And so people will be able to catch it up on live stream. So that's really a great benefit, but they are out there. There are so many different places and ways that you can speak: meetings, venues, associations, conferences, summits, numerous different ways. Why shouldn't it be you? People are looking for speakers with solutions. Why shouldn't it be you? You have an opportunity to serve your community, and those stages are just waiting to be plucked. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at the reality of the gold mine that's waiting for you. Number 8. So speaking of speaking platforms, it's just as easy to deliver your presentation on a podcast or a summit, virtual summit, as it is to a live virtual meeting or a live meeting or a virtual meeting. And the part about starting with summits and podcasts and radio shows, if you're intimidated by getting on stages, is that you can actually perfect what you're going to say on stage in question form. The same content divided by the host questions. If you give them questions so that they know what they're going to be asking and you know what they're going to be asking, allows you to practice what will be great on stage. I did over 100 interviews for my last book, and I'm telling you, I was 10 times better on stage after that because it was coming so naturally to me. I knew what I was going to say. I knew what the flow was going to be. And you never want to memorize your speech. You just want to memorize the outline so you can speak to each different section and portions of it as you follow along. So the next thing is, it's always nice when somebody pays you to get on stage. But the truth is there are fewer and fewer organizations that will do that. So don't hold out with this, I'm only going to speak if I get paid. It doesn't work like that in today's world because those stages are so limited, and they really are for the people that are much more experienced and have a track record. So, and the competition is really stiff for those. So you have to be at the top of your game. But with meetings, venues, and associations, the local kinds of opportunities are endless. And so are the virtual and live summits. And it really allows you to get your skill level up, build your sense of confidence when you actually get on a real stage. 9. That was 9, sorry. I'm off by 1. And so 10 is that one of the real benefits of speaking is that you're talking to one too many instead of just one person. If you are already burned out, tired, exhausted, and you're trying to figure out how to make more money, how to serve more people, speaking is an incredibly effective way to go, because you can get into a room of 30, 40, 100 people and pick up multiple clients instead of having to do the sales process one person at a time. Now, you can then take them into an individual coaching program. You can take them into a mastermind. You can take them into an e-course and maximize your time. But you're not losing all that time in one-on-one conversations, your sales conversations, offer conversations. They know what the offer is. They've expressed their interest. And then it's all a matter of either them coming online and taking advantage of it, or having a briefer discovery call in order for you to actually get them to say yes to working with you. So that's some of the 10 reasons that it's really, really valuable for you to look seriously at speaking. And of course, over here at Speakertunity, we would love to help support you, give you an idea of where the opportunities are for you personally. So I currently invite you to come on over to meet with me. And here's the really cool part. I'm going to be doing a workshop here with Gertrude in about a month called The Path to Total Visibility and Massive Impact. And I'm going to go through a lot of the different tools you need to get booked and all the ways that the things you need to know before you ever get to actually starting to pitch your bookers, and then where you're going to find the easy ways to get booked. So I really hope that this has been of value to you. And I'm so glad that you're here as part of this summit. And I want to thank Gertrude for giving me the opportunity to do this and to share this with you. And I know that here I am on the closing day. So hopefully we saved a little bit of the best for last. So it was so wonderful to see you, and feel free. I am always here to help you find your voice.
All right. That was the amazing Jackie Lappin. incredible woman with an amazing database. Good morning, Jerry. Lovely to see you. Happy 4th of July. Jerry, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Thank you. We went down and went to the carnival this morning so that I could get online today. So here I am.
Wow, wonderful. I wasn't expecting you to make it. That's awesome.
Well,
So you are good?
Well, I can, yeah, I think the family's all going to go to the movies. I just told them to go without me. So I can stay.
Okay.
I didn't get
Wonderful.
the schedule for me for today.
All right. Let me see what's happening with Ruth. Ruth, are you there? I emailed it to both of you. So if you check emails, there will be an alert. Our next speaker is...
Okay, here.
Let me see here.
I just got them.
So...
Kekua.
Is that how you say it? You're from Hawaii, so you would
know. Let me sound out the name. I can probably say it. Kekua Kobashigawa.
Right.
Shigawa.
You've got her bio, Jerry?
Let me look. That's in another place. Let me look. Get myself set up here real quick. I know I have them. Those I want to do on the phone.
Oops. Do you need me to read it?
I just found it.
Okay.
I can do it. Did you take the glasses to the... I had a pair of glasses.
You need your glasses.
Yes, I must have them. Okay. Kekua Kobashigawa. I had a career in the fitness industry, teaching, training, and running a gym. I loved it, and by all accounts, it seemed like the perfect lifelong career path. However, I eventually realized that my true passion lay in the aspects that can be overlooked in pursuit of physical goals. It was internal growth. You see, I know what it feels like to question what life is supposed to be and think I've used the word I don't say, screwed up it all. I was a stereotype trifecta: the unhappy wife, the overwhelmed mother, the empty woman who has no idea when she disappeared. I experienced marital betrayal and lived long-term emotional abuse. I was lost and confused and unsure of everything except for my children. It wasn't until I learned how to develop myself from within that I realized I could create a powerfully happy life. Over time, I had systemized my program and crafted a really simple approach. I emerged in healing stronger and more confident than I'd ever been, knowing how I wanted to live. I wanted my life to look and feel, and I became driven to help others, women, to do the same for themselves. It is my pleasure to present Kekua.
Hi, Gertrude. Thank you for having me. My name is Kekua Kobashigawa. I'm 43 years old. I am from and live in Hawaii in the United States. And I'm just really glad to be here. I love the concept that you have going on here of being able to use our stories to educate and empower other women, because really I think all of our stories are so very similar that if we didn't allow ourselves to feel so alone when we're going through hard times, we would be able to see the same struggles in the people around us and be able to learn and rise from them. So my story begins, I would say the beginning of my path that gets me to where I'm at today is my divorce. I woke up almost exactly 13 years ago. It was sometime in April, and my closet was halfway empty because my husband had come home during the middle of the night. He had cleared out all of his stuff. And so I woke up to seeing this empty closet, and we talked on the phone and we argued back and forth, and we kind of danced back and forth between separated and not separated for a little while. But eventually, obviously, I'm single now. So the divorce did go through, and it was the most betrayal I had ever experienced. It was the greatest betrayal. The only person at that time who I believed I could really trust for the rest of my life, had been unfaithful, had come to the decision that that was where he should be, and took off running with that. So that triggered me into personal development of my own, because the initial instinct was, what did I do wrong? What had I done? Where was I not looking? What was I not paying attention to? And I really started to examine all the ways that I was at fault, which, of course, two people are in a relationship. I was at fault, but I was not only at fault. And over the course of that year that followed, I learned how to be critical of the decisions that I make, to really examine them and make them intentionally. Are they going to benefit me? Are they smart choices to make? Or am I acting on emotion? Am I taking responsibility for myself, or am I shirking it? Over the next course, that's the course of the next year, that was the development that I had come upon. And I had joined a gym for the first time in my life. It was a unusual experience. My father had been in the military, so we always had equipment at home. I never needed to find a facility. And when I got divorced, what I needed to find was community. What I needed to find was something that occupied my time. And I had joined the YMCA. Had children had a little community, and that was the domino that led to everything that I have right now. Every person in my life is a person who I came to because we had some kind of a connection through the gym, whether that was because we both liked the same kind of exercise, or we just got to know each other, we were friendly, or our children knew each other. Every person in my life that cares about me and that I care about right now came from YMCA. Through that, I in the fitness industry. It became my career. I loved it. It was incredible because I had always loved movement. I loved dance. There was this new format called Zumba, which is now, world famous. At the time, it was kind of taking off, and it became lifeblood, honestly, for a couple of years. It was my sanity. It was how I went about finding love for myself again, was through movement. My children had their community. They were active with their friends, who fortunately were also the children of my friends. So we had the greatest community that we could have had, really. We had all similar interests. And from that fitness industry career, I came to a point where I wanted to have representation in my clothing. I wanted to have clothing that fit everything that I loved, because there's a bit of a dichotomy in the fitness world where you're either a strength-based person, you like to lift, or you're a cardio-based person. And I was on that line between the two of them. I liked both, and I wanted clothing that could reflect that. So I tried starting a business with my now ex-boyfriend, and it was through starting that business that I discovered actual personal development. So I had learned some personal responsibility coming out of my divorce. A couple of years later, I discovered actual personal development, which I hadn't known anything about prior to that. And my first mentor from a distance was a man named Andy Fella. He formed a community called the RTA Syndicate. And through that, I developed myself. I became a better person, a stronger woman. I went into leadership in the gym. I was running my own gym at that time, not gym that I owned, but the gym I belonged to. And everything that I'm capable of now is because of later life education of personal development. As I do, and the coaching I gave to my client, my students within fitness developed with me, I came to a point where I realized that I liked seeing the light of potential turn on in my clients' eyes far more than I cared about fitness changes, because I knew that I could help them lose 20 pounds, fit into these jeans, do all those fitness goals. I could help them find them. But if I didn't address the things that made them need my help in the first place, to me, I felt like I wasn't actually giving them help. I was putting a Band-Aid over whatever it was that caused them to need help to love their bodies. When I came to that realization, I thought back on all the development that I had received. So the mentors that I had from a distance, the mentors that I had in, and I realized that they were all men. As I examined the personal development industry, it is primarily dominated by men, and they're incredible men. There's so much value that you can find in it, but there's a lot in the female experience that a man can't express, that a man can't understand. And I came to a realization that I could be upset about that. I could be sad that other women wouldn't find the development that they needed because there wasn't a voice that they could identify with, or it could be the voice. I thought that I could either complain about it or I could become the resource for other women that I had received. And that was the trigger that led me to here and now, which is using the story that I, which over the course of the last 15 years has involved what so many women experience: betrayal of my spouse, a sudden divorce. In the relationship that followed, I experienced emotional abuse, manipulation, things that I had been naive to because I had never experienced them, of course, before. I thought that that was something that you see on TV, something that you see in the movies, not something people actually do to each other. So I was vulnerable to that. And I know I share my story, not the story itself, but if I share the healing that came out of it, so many women have the same story all the way up to the healing. But if I share the healing that I got, that's where I feel like I can impact women. And that's my dream. I want to inspire other women to recognize they can heal from the things that they've gone through, that we all go through, unfortunately, and use the system that I created for myself to hopefully be the steps that they take towards taking control of their life, to empowering themselves, to recognizing everything that they're capable of, everything that they deserve, which is everything they're capable of, and helping that light turn on. So coming out of that, I wrote a book. I published it at the end of last year. And I'm very, very happy to say that I launched that bestseller, because that to me, that I reached as many women as I could. I can confidently say that if I put out a resource into the world, I'm putting it out there because I want to be able to touch women that I may never, ever come in contact with. I can't touch everyone one by one. I can't work with every single woman that needs me, but I can put out a resource, as many resources as possible, to help them find the same healing that I found.
Well, it's a pity that the story you shared is a more common story than it's not common. So I have a similar story: separation, divorce, ended up grossly overweight and collapsing with heart failure from hypertension and stress. And this is happening to women all the time. But one thing that you said that really struck me was taking responsibility for what had happened. You're right. It does take two people to make a relationship work. So if I could take you back to that younger you, that young woman, and you could have a conversation with her based on what life has taught you up to this point, and you could give her 3 nuggets of wisdom about taking responsibility in a relationship from what you've learned or experienced, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
I think my first would be recognize we're unhappy, because truthfully, both of us were unhappy. We, happily married people truly don't end up in that place. There were problems along the way. There were symptoms and signs. And if I had been stronger than I was at the time and intellectually honest with myself, we could have come to that divorce sooner and maybe in an amicable way, as opposed to, we weren't, it wasn't a terrible drawn out kind of thing like some of the things that you see in the news, but it could have been done on a more friendly basis. And if I had known and understood my own self and the differences between us, I could have been honest with myself earlier and recognized that was going to come, and we could have done it earlier, perhaps even before we had children. The second thing that I would tell that young woman is that she's far more beautiful than she feels, and that the world will see that if she sees that. And that really that's going to be the key to everything. I think the underlying basis of self-love is self-respect. And when you have those two things, you show up in the world in a different way, and the world treats you the way that you deserve to be treated, the way we all deserve to be treated.
I love that. I really love what you've just said. Sometimes we don't see our own value, and we are our worst critics. We literally would say things to ourselves in our own heads that you would never say to a friend.
Oh, yes.
So sometimes when I'm coaching women who are going through situations like this, I just keep saying, that little voice that runs in your head, would you say that to your best friend? If the answer is no, we need to change that inner dialogue that is inside us. We are our worst critics. So in your coaching, you talk about emotional coaching. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit what that's all about.
Emotional maturity, I think, is something that a lot of us are not aware that we are lacking a certain amount of it. We get into relationships that are emotionally immature because we don't understand our own lack of emotional maturity. And this manifests in the way that I've seen it. The biggest manifestation comes through different forms of insecurity. So, when we have prejudice against certain things, they're not based in logic, which most of the time they're not. These are rooted in our insecurities that are deep-seated, subconscious, unconscious. A lot of them come back from our childhood. And learning to find the insecurities that are underneath of our behavior and all of the other unconscious programming that goes along with it that influences all of our emotions helps us be able to evaluate our emotions in the moment instead of reacting to them. When we can evaluate and respond to the things that we feel as opposed to being controlled by them, it changes the dynamic that we have with our own selves, that internal dialogue, and then the dynamic that we have with the whole world, with our significant others, our children, our bosses inside of our employment or our clients. Everything that we do can be improved if we improve our own emotional maturity.
The other thing you mentioned was that you regret not having left earlier and got out of this relationship earlier. A lot of us can see the signs coming from a mile off. Sometimes when the children come, you say, oh, I need to stay for my children. I need to keep my family together. Mm-hmm. What was the breaking point for you? What was the straw that broke the camel's back that made you leave?
I actually was the one left. He had left. He walked out in the middle of the night. I would say the straw that made me not willing to take him back, when we were arguing, I knew there would come a point, because I understand my own self personally. And I said to him, there will come a point where this can't be undone, where we can't move backwards from it. And that point for me, when he came back and he wanted to put an end to the divorce proceedings and he wanted to get back together, I had crossed the barrier of recognizing how much easier my life was as a single mother than it had been as a married woman and already being a single mother, because I was carrying, like so many women do, I was carrying everything in the household. There was no help. When he came home from work, he felt like he shouldn't be responsible for anything. And when I hit a point in my, alone time and my solitude and recognizing this is all so much easier than it was when I expected help, that was my no going back moment. That was the line that I crossed over and knew that I could never come back from.
Now, if I take you into your future, let's imagine that time is an illusion. Your past, your present exist in the same timeline. And I could take you to the 100-year-old you, that amazing woman who's empowered so many other women through the power of her story. And if you could have a conversation with her, what would you say to her? Because she's guided you to that point.
I would thank her for the diligence that it took for me to get to that place, because I understand that learning is slow. And a lot of times that we do have to come through the experiences before we can learn from them. There's a certain things that we can learn by seeing experiences around us, but it's also a certain amount that we will never understand until we experience it. So I would thank her for her diligence, her patience with me, and for her love, because it's the love that she developed that lets me do what I do now, that lets me want to share that with the world.
That is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, the beautiful thing is she's already in all of us, right? She's
Absolutely.
already in the future guiding us there. But sometimes as women, we forget that we have that inner strength in us. So I love to ask that question to all of my guests, because no matter what you're going through right now, you could be listening to this interview, you're on the brink of a divorce and you're thinking, can I do it? You can, if it's going to be good for you and you feel that that's the right move. So you have to trust yourself, trust your intuition. Mm-hmm. So let me end my interview with this question. Is there anything I should have asked you that I left out?
I don't think there's anything that you left out, but if I would add in one further thing, I would encourage everyone to get familiar with what your love feels like. We as women and we as moms, we can't help it. It's literally in our biology to want to care for those around us. And that's a great thing. That's how we build families. That's how we build communities. But we so often forget that we are a part of those families. We are a part of those communities. And you should know what your love feels like as much as your children do, as much as your spouse does, as much as your parents do. You need to remember to love yourself. Because if you disregard yourself, how will anyone else know how to love themselves through your example? Your children can't learn what you tell them. They learn what you do. So the best way to have that impact is to keep your cup so full that it overflows, and you can give that overflow to others. And that's how your children, your spouse, your parents, all of the community around you will learn how to love themselves. And they'll have overflow to give back to you because you've taught them how to fill themselves to an overflow.
Wow, what a beautiful and powerful end to this interview. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing to empower women. So I take it you work online, and how can people find you? What are the best ways women can reach out to you?
The easiest way is that you can reach out to my website. There's a contact form there, Kekuak, KEKUAK.com. And you can find all the socials. You can contact me directly there. You can schedule an appointment for a consultation or I always do those for free. If we find that we can't work together, I'm still going to give you as much value as I can in that meeting.
Fantastic. And the title of your book again, and where people can find the book?
My book is called Big Shit with an exclamation point so that Amazon doesn't hate it. And you can find it on Amazon. And the link to that is also on my website under resources and DBS.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this amazing interview. Thank you for bearing your soul, sharing your story. And thank you
for having me.
Thank you. I will be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, this is food for thought. Are you really happy in the relationship you're in? Can you exit before it gets worse? A lot of people leave divorce to a point where the two spouses can't talk to each other. You can't even talk about the children. The damage can be irreplaceable. You can't repair it after that. So think about your life. Think about your love. What does your love feel like? I think for me, that is my biggest take home from this interview. Learning and understanding that and filling myself up with that first. And if you meet somebody else who can reflect it back to you, it's just a cherry on the cake, but you're okay on your own. Thank you. Bye, everybody. And thank you again. Okay. Yet
Wow.
another amazing woman.
Yes. Who became a voice for the
Really?
voiceless.
I missed the title of her book.
Yeah.
She said it so fast.
Do big shit, I think. Is
I
it not?
will. Yes, and she said it with an exclamation mark so that Amazon doesn't block it.
Yeah.
Jerry's
Clever
shaking her head.
Okay.
But she brings to light a lot of points.
Yes.
People really end up almost killing their relationships, and
I've never been divorced, but
raw and honest.
I've seen some real hard times that come through divorce, and
yes,
and seeing people recover is so nice. I mean, I have friends that never recovered, and she's recovered quite nicely, and so it's doing something good with it. So that's awesome.
And just to show that she is really recovered, when he came back wanting a reconciliation, she knew. She was very sure of what she wanted.
Well, and she had a really good point. In a marriage, when you do everything at home, you are acting as a single mother. I mean, if you have to take care of everything in the house and everything with the child, and he does nothing, you are already acting as a single mom. So when you become a single mom, it's not that big a deal because you're already doing everything. And I'm glad that she could see that she was strong enough to do it on her own.
And she spoke about as we raise children that they don't necessarily follow what we say to them, but what we show and model to them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if you are in a situation where in a marriage,
role models.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. She's powerful.
They will copy and model all the examples that we give them. That is so true. So that was an interesting session. We move on to our next speaker. Who do we have next, Ruth?
We have Megan.
Megan.
Is that right? Okay. Let me get her bio.
All right.
Is that Megan Rose?
It's kind of lengthy, but it's a really good bio. It doesn't say her last name. Let me see what her last name is. Maybe it's down here.
Kachagan.
Right?
Megan Rose.
Megan is a direct response copywriter that helps life and business coaches turn more traffic into happy buyers and international strategic direct response copywriting. and a sales funnel strategy. She creates revenue-generating assets, SEO blogs, ad copy, emails, and sales pages with her signature GROW method. Grows capitalized, so that must be an acronym for something. Megan's goals is to create unhurried CEOs. She has helped hundreds of purpose-driven 6- and 7-figure brands remove the guesswork and make data-driven decisions so they can stop feeling invisible in their digital presence and initiate a meaningful transformation. Megan also mentors mom copywriters to become breadwinners on part-time hours through their writing. We talk about wealthy writer habits, how to grow a business, and time-saving productivity. Megan holds a master's degree in education and bachelor's degree in philosophy and in physics. Having pursued both arts and science, her brain is both creative and analytical, obsessed with the story that data and numbers can tell. And with 10 years of professional experience as an educator, she uses the philosophy of how humans learn, what makes your message memorable, and how to motivate them to action. When the scientist and art and teacher in her works together, it leads to powerful results. Writing the ads for $250,000 launch, crushing industry standards with a 56% open rate and 9% CTR on the email sequence. Helping drive over $1 million for clients with my copywriting and strategy. You can find her online at www.megankashigan.com and soaking in the Southern California sunshine with her husband and 2 sons. It is my pleasure to welcome to the microphone, Megan.
A writer, get a steady job. Don't you know you can't actually make a living that way? You can pursue your passion, but it'll be to pay the bills. And my personal favorite, do you have a husband income to fall back on? I smile politely. I don't tell them how much I make in my copywriting business. How I do it on 20 hours a week or less. You see, the doubt started in college. After many conversations about applying jobs, a trusted professor told me, if you can do physics, do that. There are better job opportunities and bigger pay. And I believed him because words are powerful. I ended up using my physics degree to become a high school teacher. I loved my students, how much those teenagers made me laugh, and how honored I felt when they shared with me what was really going on in their lives. I spent 10 years in the classroom, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But then I started to feel this pull, this itch for more. What about my dream to be a writer? It would all start to unfold after I stood at the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro as a newly married, newlywed, and on our honeymoon, no less. At 19,341 feet, we were way above the clouds among incredible ice cliffs at the highest point in Africa, atop one of the world's largest volcanoes. The journey took 7 days, 40 miles, and through 5 distinct climate zones. But it wasn't until the descent on the last day that he called me a writer. I argued with him, this voice in my head that wasn't my own. And the problem with 7 Days on a Moon is that you know it's God's voice and not yours. It was push and pull, back and forth, a tug of war in my mind. I'm too afraid to press publish. What will people think? And his response, you must. This is what you were made to do. Nothing else will satisfy. So I throw the ball back in his court and I say, I'll make the time and space to write. You need to make the words worthwhile. And the deepest part of me was thinking, I really don't want to do this. And at the same time, the smallest voice in my head reminds me that actually there's nothing you want more. So when we returned to our home in America, sunny Southern California, I wrote about my experience climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And it got published in the local newspaper. And then my coworker gave me the book Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. Maybe you've heard of it, the #1 national bestseller. And it included a short post-it note that said this: your writing reminded me of this. And that is what it took to give me the confidence to at least just start taking online copywriting courses in the margins of my day. I read books by copywriting legends. I binged on all the podcasts, and I got my first clients while I was still a full-time teacher. Because for most of my life, I doubted that I could actually make a difference. Not me, not the quiet one, but here I was, finally seen in my writing. I experienced how I could capture attention with my words, and that skill was very highly valuable during 10 years as a school physics teacher. I captured the attention of teenagers in a subject that they couldn't care less about. And that's part of the reason why I was honored with the Stanford University Teaching Award back in 2015. You see, copywriting is a game of attention too. And copywriting has taught me this: my words can actually change the narrative. The words that I write can literally change lives when they encourage right readers to make a smart investment in my clients' offers. As a copywriter, I get to harness that attention and turn it into sales. I help the business move forward, make money, and make it feel effortless for my clients. And my secret? It's actually what I thought was hardship all along. If I say that copywriting is both an art and a science. Back in college, I could never decide if I wanted to major in the arts or the sciences, so I did both, and it felt like a burden. But now I see how they both play together. You see, I'd already been obsessed with the story that data and numbers could tell as a physics major. So when I realized both the scientist and the artist in me could work together, that's when I got some powerful results. I wrote the ads for a $250,000 launch. I crushed industry standards with open rates and click-through rates, and I helped drive over $1 million for my clients with my copywriting and my strategy. But my impact goes just beyond just the clients that I work with. When I wrote the words behind a business coaching membership, more fledgling CEOs stepped into their power. When I wrote the words for a health coaching program, more women felt confident in their bodies without needing to diet. When I wrote the story of how a formerly homeless man earned his place at Harvard, more underprivileged felt encouraged to power to do more through her, and the ripple effect that heals and empowers the other coaches to do the same. The words that I wrote helped push these missions forward. Words become flesh. Every click is not just a number, and every sale is not just another dollar sign. These campaigns hold so much impact on real human lives because words are powerful. What matters most to me is what is behind those numbers that I can get. It's the moms that are changing the financial trajectory of their family because they can work from home and care for their kids at the same time. It's when white and colored women learn how to have conversations about racial justice from the heart. It's about those who stop playing small and truly step into their power. It's the macho men who finally learn how to respect themselves and others. It's the women who finally love their body and end their battle with food. It's about the procrastinating perfectionists who finally master their calendar and realize that they do actually have enough time. It's the underprivileged students getting access to STEM education. It's the immigrant who was told she would never be successful and is now helping others find their success too. This is who I get the honor to work with. It's been an incredible journey, but I'm not sure if it's best to describe my business journey and entrepreneurship as accidental or divine. I never intended to become an entrepreneur. For most of my life, I never even knew exactly what that was, and I certainly never identified as a risk taker or even a creative. But now I've seen how powerful business and entrepreneurship can be, both for my clients.
Okay. It looks like we are having problems with the connection again. Jerry, would you like to take over playing the videos? And we'll see if we get a better result from your end.
Yes, I would love to try. I mean, I've got it right here. I'm not sure how to share it, share the screen, but I'm gonna give it a shot. I mean, I have it up on my computer, so it should come up, I think.
So click on share at the bottom of the screen.
I'm now mom.
Okay, share, and then
So you're going to share screen.
Do I have to copy it first and then share it? Because I've got it in another.
Share screen.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, I see. I see share screen. Okay. Let me, I just realized I have the wrong thing open. Let me just have a minute. I can do this. I know I can.
It's also sounding weird now. Can you hear that?
Let's see here.
Yeah, I don't know why your quality has been so bad. Every time you try and play these videos.
Okay.
Yeah, a good day yesterday.
Yeah, they did better yesterday. Okay, so I have comfort here. So do I open that up on one screen and then share screen?
Yeah, share the screen where you have the video open.
Okay, so let me go there first. Okay, share screen.
Jerry's sound has changed too, hasn't it, Ruth? Is it just me?
You're
What, Jerry?
Jerry's sound sounds very choppy. Is it just on my side?
No, yours sounds really choppy as well.
Oh gosh, it must be the technical issues.
Okay.
Yeah, because even your picture, Gertrude, is not so clear.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Okay, so I open up the YouTube thing video first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then how do I share the screen? Can you see that?
No, we can't see it. So
okay, so then okay, I see share.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here. My name is Comfort Dondo, and I am based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am 38-year-old leader, and I'm very happy to be on having.
Okay, I've got her up. I have to figure out how to mesh the two.
Share and then choose the window where it is on your screen.
Oh, okay. Okay, share screen.
Mm-hmm.
Share screen.
It might say Chrome tab or window.
It's what it's doing is sharing. It's sharing a screen that we're already in, instead of.
It should give you different options. Should I try?
You want to try on your side, Ruth?
Okay, let's see.
I just have to figure out the steps to do this.
Yeah.
I got both of them. I can switch between them, but I don't know how to make them come on the same time. Oh, wait a minute.
Are you on your computer or your tablet, Jerry?
I'm on my computer. But it looks like I'm sharing what we already have. Do you see it down in the window?
We can't see anything.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh no, so you're not sharing the right window.
Well, no, there she is. Is it not the right thing?
Should I play?
Yeah, go ahead and play it, Ruth, and make the screen bigger.
Oh, that's Ruth doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get mine out of there.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here. My name is Comfort Dondo, and I am based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Oh.
I am a 38-year-old community leader, and I'm very happy to be on the show today. Thank you so much for having me. So my story begins, actually, I'm born in Zimbabwe, right outside the outskirts of Harare.
You guys hear this baby?
But the township
Yes.
I was...
Okay.
I can see it
Is
in
it
here.
clear?
It is clear.
Okay. It's very choppy from my end. Go ahead, Ruth.
Born in, did not reflect the capital city at all. It was quite a modest, according to outsiders, probably impoverished part of Zimbabwe. But for me, growing up as a child, it was one of the richest places because of the sense of community. My story starts about age 9, when I was sexually abused by an uncle who lived with us. It was in that moment, at that young age, that I began to find ways to escape mentally. I withdrew. I began to find ways to escape at that young age, including planning how I would leave my environment. So I grew up just not wanting to be in my environment. In addition, around the same age, I also began to notice the domestic violence that was happening around my community. I also began to notice the height of the HIV pandemic in my area, with almost every other person I knew losing 2 or 3 members of the family. So my childhood is really where my story starts. So in my quest to move away from all the tragic and the pain, I found myself in the middle of a snowstorm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, USA at age 17, with a small suitcase and a big dream, without even knowing how I was going to fulfill the dream. But I want to say, I always say I had a small suitcase and a big dream, but I also had a very big invisible knapsack. That was the trauma I had brought with me from Zimbabwe. And my journey begins here in the Minnesota, in USA. As I started to find myself as the young woman with unhealed trauma, and that's where the real journey began for me. I met my first husband at age 21. He was a Minnesotan, and I began to attract what I call a vicious cycle of the very things I was trying to run away from. So I relived my childhood in my adulthood. And the only difference is that I now had small children involved with it. So I survived domestic violence, extreme systemic violence, from around 25 to about my mid 30s. I was literally in a vicious cycle of something that I would later learn was resulting from unhealed trauma. And this is what brings me to this platform today, the personal work, healing work I had to do to when I posed and asked the question, why do I keep reliving the same cycle, no matter how hard I was trying to live that? And it was realizing in the moment when I realized, as I was writing my journal, which then turns into my first book called Facing the Giants, I realized that I needed to heal my childhood trauma. And I needed to go and collect the young girl I left in the small township in Harare, Zimbabwe, and bring her along with me to my adulthood and heal her. And that was the changing moment for me. So since then, I have started a movement, My Sister's Keeper, where we do discuss healing in culturally specific ways. I have also started a very successful nonprofit organization called Pumulani, Minnesota African Women Against Violence. And although it's based in Minnesota, it's actually a global um, um, outreaching nonprofit that really works with ending all forms of violence against women and girls, sexual violence, domestic violence, trafficking, and the core focus of our program, or the core focus of my work right now, is ending cycles of violence through helping even both perpetrators, survivors, and victims, helping them find their healing. Because I believe that ending violence is how we're going to heal. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my story.
Your story is absolutely amazing, Comfort. And the interesting thing is, for a lot of women who have experienced sexual abuse, violence of any sort, they do end up repeating that cycle, that pattern, and attracting the same kind of person in their lives. Now, you've done a lot of work on yourself, and I'm sure you're now using what you've learned personally to help other women. What is it that a woman needs to be aware of so they don't get sucked into the same situation again?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gertrude. You know, one of the things I identified, or one of the sayings I'm very well known for saying, is you cannot heal what you cannot reveal, or you cannot really heal something until you identify what it is. That's the first step. A lot of the women that I work with, they have not even identified the language of what's happening to them. So they just know that what's happening to them does not feel right. They know that there's a pattern. Sometimes they're not even aware of the pattern. They just think it's a coincidence. So the first step for the women is reflect and identify, name things. And once you start naming things, you start to take your power back. So here's an example. If you have two partners in a row who are emotionally abusive, that's really invisible, but you can feel it, that they're being abusive. The belittling, they're making you feel like you're not yourself. Name that. It is emotional abuse. Unless you name it, you will never be able to heal it, and you won't be able to prevent it. So that's the first step. The second step is, I would say, never like disagree with your intuition. When your intuition is telling you that something is not right, then something is really not right. Do not be in isolation. A lot of abusers like to isolate. In isolation is where a lot of women end up, being abused severely for longer periods of time. I say always stay connected to your tribe of sisters, your truth sayers, who can tell you that, these days you're not really being yourself, who can really give you honest feedback. These are the two main things that I really encourage, especially women and young women. When you start to feel like things are not, adding up, or I'm feeling like my spirit is being violated, to just name it, and then deal with that right away. And I say, do not wait, do not contemplate leaving. It takes an average of about 7 times for any survivor of domestic violence to leave abuse, 7 times. So it's a very complex, vicious cycle. But I think the 7th time figure is something that can be avoided if you're surrounded by people who love you and who can encourage you, to supporting you to leave. Because for a lot of women, they end up living in a cascade. if they don't leave early enough. So those are my points that I would want to share with women.
So what would one do if you are not prepared financially, for example? You know, you talked about women being isolated. A lot of time that isolation also goes into economic isolation. You end up finding yourself not working at home, totally dependent on the man that you're with. And then you don't have the money to even leave, even if you wanted to. So what are the steps that one should put in place to be able to get the financial resources and leave? And even if you don't have the money, how do you find the organizations that can help you get out of that abusive situation?
Good question. I'll touch back a little bit on the isolation piece. A lot of the women that end up coming to our homes or who end up calling our crisis line have been living in isolation for an average of 5 to 10 years. It's the time they were living with the abuser. So this really makes it hard to plan. But when they do come in contact and maybe they're not ready to leave, we have what we call a safety plan, a safety exit plan. That you plan your exit quietly, putting everything in place, especially when there are children involved, and plan it in a way that the abuser never knows about your plans. Because this is the most dangerous time. When women plan to leave, when women plan to exit, normally they are not able to exit. Just for context sakes, here in Minneapolis last week, we were just doing a procession. We had 25 cars representing each woman who was killed in 2021. 25 women were killed due to domestic violence, homicide in Minnesota. This is the USA, first world country, and those are just the documented number. By next year, we'll be knowing that there'll be additional numbers after the evidence is found. So this is what I always encourage women. As far as staying in touch, I always say keep those 3 sisters, keep those 3 friends that you can tell everything. Because what happens with abuse is that normally the abuser makes you feel like you're not worthy. And they make you feel like you cannot depend on anybody else. So what ends up happening is the victim, survivors, they're normally even isolated from their own family. And then I also want to touch on the cultural aspects. I'll speak for my the African community, but this happens then in mainstream communities where there's a tendency to want to keep up appearances, right? You hear a lot of women saying, I was just trying to keep it together. They have to show up on social media looking like everything is dandy. And yet, they are really dying on the inside. So I want to say, really assess and see what is it that is very important to you. Is it to please everybody else on the outside world and be crying and being beat at behind closed doors? Some women also say they're staying for the children. This is a common one. I'm staying for the children. I heard this a lot growing up with my African sisters. But one thing we don't realize is that when children observe domestic violence, they are much impacted into their adulthood. So for you to break that cycle and make sure that your children are modeling and they're also seeing a positive and healthy relationship patterns, you may not want to keep it together for the children, because what you're keeping together is really a poison for the children. Domestic violence affects children from the time they're observing it up into their adulthood, which then creates that cycle in the next generation. Yeah.
You're very right. A lot of women do think that they are doing it for their families and they're trying to keep it together, but they do more damage than good.
Absolutely.
Now, you are involved with the Herstory movement. You are going to be one of our key partners in bringing the movement to the United States. I know that there are a lot of women in your networks who have amazing stories. What nuggets of wisdom would you give them in terms of coming onto our platform and presenting, and the benefits that they can get by being a part of sharing their story?
I am super delighted, looking forward to this year because of this partnership we're having at Truth. And I want to say, I have to give a personal example. I am the woman that I am today, who's able to use my pain for a platform and my purpose. I found my purpose in my pain, And I know that the Herstory platform is one such place. A lot of women have not had the chance or have not had the safe space to share their stories. And I really know that working with you, Herstory platform is going to be enable and coach and give permission to a lot of women and men, who have a story to share, who might have a very painful, hard to share story. I think it's a place where they're going to be able to not only share the story, but share it in an impactful manner, and then share it in a way that has a lot of more impact beyond their own circle. And then on top of that, I want to say I've been able to share my story in a way that actually creates for me. Are you sharing your story, but you're also sharing your story and monetizing that part. So I'm really excited, and I'm hoping that as many people who have everybody has a story, as many people can join the platform. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think from my end, one of the things that I want women to be aware of is that our platform is not just a speaking platform. We will help with the publishing of your story in our Herstory magazine. You will get published in an anthology with 9 other women. So we have 10 women in every volume. And you get to own your story, no matter what it is that has happened in your life. By sharing it, you're going to be helping another woman who might be in a similar situation, not knowing how to get out. And then they read your book or they hear you speak on these international stages. Then that becomes a real game changer. So we're really excited that your community is going to be coming onto our platform, and we'll be working and collaborating with you in the United States to bring about some magic in women's lives, because we can change the world. And it's going to be one story at a time, one woman at a time, with each of us honoring all the experiences we've gone through. I mean, Comfort, when I look at you, where you came from, what you've gone through to be this amazing mentor, coach, helping and empowering other women is absolutely incredible. So we'll end the interview with one question. If you could go back to the younger you, that young woman who found herself in a cycle of domestic violence, abuse, and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom, what would you say to her? And I'm asking this so that if there is a young woman or even an older woman right now who's listening to us on this podcast, watching us on YouTube, and she's saying, what do I do? How do I get out of it? What 3 pieces of advice would you give her?
Absolutely. The first one is I would tell her that it's going to be okay. So that give yourself permission, it's going to be okay. That's the first one. The second nugget of wisdom I would give to any young woman listening under the sound of my voice is that the ultimate maker, your maker, already knows your path before you were born. And every single thing that happens to you, at you, within you, he already knows. And a lot of it, he allows to happen for a purpose. So find your purpose in your pain. The third thing is, please do not stay in your pain too much, lest it will drown you. Find your way up outside of the pain and try to use it as a platform. Step on it as a platform. The world is waiting for you to step on that platform and share that pain in a way that will be healing for others. This is what I would tell my younger self.
Absolutely inspiring. Thank you so much for being online today and sharing your story with us, inspiring women worldwide to step into their power, own their stories, and change their lives. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. The Herstory movement is going global. We have now got amazing partners like Comfort in the United States to bring it to the US. We're looking for more partners in the UK, in Europe, So wherever you are in the world, if you are inspired to be a part of this amazing movement, please get in touch. My email is at the bottom of the screen, admin@herstorycircle.com. And if you're in the US, Comfort, what website can people find you?
They can find me on www.pumulani.org, and Pumulani is spelled P like Paul, HUMULANI.org. And my full name is Comfort Dondo. I can also be found on Facebook. I'm on all social media platforms. So, and thank you so much for having me. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. Yeah.
Awesome to connect with you. Exciting things are coming in 2020.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. We will
Thank you.
see you again when I come back with yet another amazing guest tomorrow. Have a fantastic day, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you, Comfort.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now.
Bye-bye.
That Comfort is amazing. That was on my end. That was completely clear. It was such a good interview. My goodness, she's extraordinary. The things that how far
So
she's.
can you? Is my connection any better now?
It surely. Let me. I have to see if my. Yeah, your picture's much better.
Yeah, the picture is much better.
Much better.
Still, oh, thank
Great.
God.
I had to restart my computer, so hopefully it will get better.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I'm going to rely on you guys to control things from that end.
Okay.
So who do we have next?
Let me look here.
Alison Arnoff?
Allison Arnoff, yeah.
Did you get her bio?
I did not. Well, did you guys email something?
No, I was hoping Gertrude was looking for it.
Oh.
All right, I'll find it.
They just want to read this comment on LinkedIn from Denise Martin. She says Gertrude is like a freight train that can be stopped on a mission to empower women. It is an honor to be part of her tribe.
Oh, that's fabulous.
We'll be hearing from Denise very soon. I just finished editing her video. So that's Allison's bio, Jerry, in the chat.
Okay.
Part of it.
Champion of the ONLY onlys, executive coach, consultant. I help women leaders in tech and startup founders create an impact-driven legacy by mastering influence and communication and time. Ooh, that sounds really interesting too. With great pleasure, let's welcome Allison to the platform.
Who's cueing the video? You or Ruth?
I still don't, I'm not sure how to do it yet.
Yeah, no, we'll give you a crash course after we finish today, Jerry.
Awesome. Okay, sounds great.
Long overdue. Ruth has disappeared.
Is she working behind the scenes?
I'm not sure what she's up to. Okay.
Oh, she's going. Okay, good.
Yeah. Take off the comment, Ruth.
Sorry. You can't hear? There's no sound?
No sound. And you need to remove the comment as well from the screen.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I need to do.
Oh, there you go. Maybe that now we can hear the sound.
So there's no sound. Let
Well,
me try again.
Yeah, try again.
Let me tell you a little. Hi, everybody. Allison Arnoff here, and welcome to our talk today on the 5 B's of entrepreneur self-care. First, let's talk about what is self-care and why it matters, and a little bit about what's different about that and mindfulness. So self-care is typically what you need to do to mentally, emotionally, and physically take care of yourself, to make sure you're healthy, you're happy, you're rested, you live longer, you manage your stress. All of those things are self-care. Mindfulness is your ability to be completely present and aware of what's going on, focused on the person in front of you without the clattering in your head. So I'm curious why you think this is important to you as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a human. Think about how more self-care and a little mindfulness can have a positive impact for you. So before we get into the 5 B's, let me tell you a little bit about myself. First, the boring stuff you can read. I'm, long career in tech, 30-year career in tech. Started with a master's in engineering. I've worked for 7 startups. Never my idea, darn it. But I've had 6 exits. And then I left in 2016 to go back to school. I'm a certified executive coach, and I'm a strategy consultant for B2B startups. Just some fun things about me is I'm a former Division I swimmer and triathlete. I'm a big adventure traveler. The top photo is day 3 of hiking the Inca Trail in Machu Picchu, and I'm a shark diver. And that's me on the right, and I took that photo of a lemon shark on the left. Maybe not fun, but noteworthy is I near-death survivor in 2020, not related to COVID, and had to fight to get my life back. I am also an open ocean stand-up paddleboarder out there with the dolphins and the whales occasionally, and I'm an amateur photographer. But now let's get back to the 5 B's, but now you know who's telling you about it. So the next one first thing we're going to talk about is your beliefs. So your beliefs are the way you talk to yourself or think about yourself, but also the habits that get created because of the way you talk to yourself. So Shirzad Hamini had developed this belief in that we have mental fitness. We need mental fitness to be able to have self-care. And so mental fitness is really the ability to respond from the positive vantage point, the positive side of your brain versus a negative mindset. And it has a bunch of advantages. First, that will give you peak performance, peak outcomes when you're looking at things with a different side of your brain. It gives you peace of mind. It's also healthy relationships, because when you're kinder to yourself, it does translate into your relationships. So what gets in the way of that mental fitness, of responding from that positive mindset? What Shirzad talks about is there are 10 saboteurs. They're gremlins, or the voices in your head that try to prevent you from having the progress or the outcomes that you want. The one we all have in common is the judge. And I think you know that voice, a judge that might look in the mirror and not say nice things to yourself. I grew up in a household where we were encouraged, quote unquote, to be high performers for excellence. And so I developed a lot of self-judgment when I feel like I fall short. Well, this judge has 9 accomplices, and they can range from the hyperachiever, which is one of my top ones, where you measure your worth by your achievements. I'm also a stickler, which is the perfectionist. You might be a pleaser, where you feel like you have to make everybody happy first. You might be a avoider. When there's tough conversations or tough things to get done, you find another way to do it. You might be a controller, where you feel in control when you're in control, right? There's 9 different ones. And at the end of the presentation, I'll give you a link so you can email me, and I'll get you the survey, and you can see which one of these apply to you and then how to start countering them. So another question for you that might seem off the cuff here is pain good for you? Well, sometimes it is, right? When you put your hand on a hot stove, it tells you it's hot and it takes it off. If you didn't get pain, your hand would just sit there and get destroyed, get burned. So negative emotions are kind of like a pain, and they are helpful for like a second, like on the stove, when they're an alert signal. Oh, I'm in this negative emotion. But when you're staying in the negative emotion, it just stops your ability to see things clearly. You don't respond with things like empathy and curiosity or laser focused action. And that's because you're responding from the negative emotion, the negative voice of the saboteur. The counter to the saboteur is the sage. And that sage comes from a different part of your brain that is associated with the positive emotions, peace and calm, the clear-headed laser focus, creativity, and the big picture. So when you operate from the sage perspective, it believes that every circumstance or everything that happens can be turned into a gift or opportunity. It's kind of like everything happens for a reason, maybe not to that extreme, but there's always an opportunity. So a victim saboteur might say, why does everything happen to me? Where a sage might say, why did this happen to me and what can I learn from it? You might get, completely different responses, completely different outcomes. So one of the questions is, which perspective is true? The saboteur says this is bad, and the sage says this is a gift. Well, it's a simple answer. Whichever you believe comes true. But to do that, you have to develop your mental fitness. And to do that, it's really the ability to shift from that negative to the positive voices, even in tough challenges. But there's just like going to the gym, fitness takes exercise and it takes consistency. And at the end of this presentation with that link, I'll be able to share with you more about it. But let's move on to our next B of self-care, and that is boundaries. And boundaries are the physical, emotional, and mental limits we put to protect ourselves. Excuse me. So what are we protecting ourselves from? Well, stress, overwhelm, and a whole list of things that we'll talk about. But I break boundaries into 3 types. The first are time boundaries, and that's saying, I don't work nights or weekends. I'm done at 6 o'clock. My phone gets off, notifications get turned off. It means you take vacations and you enjoy those vacations. And you take your sick time when you're not feeling well. It also means you give yourself quiet work time and say, for the next 2 hours, my phone is off. I have a do not disturb on the door if we're working at home, which a lot of us are these days. So those are time boundaries. The second are volume, and that's when you say no to more. To say, I don't have enough room on my plate right now to do that, or the work I'm going to do is going to suffer if I do that. So to say no. And the other option for volume, you can say yes, but what's the clear value? Can you still get your other work done? Is there a value to you, the company, the career that's worth saying yes to? And the third type of volume boundary is to delegate, to take things off your plate and put them on other things. Delegation is to be the ability to say, does this need to be uniquely me? Now, if you're a controller, it's going to be even harder, but does this need to be uniquely me, or can somebody else do this and do it well, and I can focus on the things that need to be uniquely me? The third type of boundary are duration, and that's like negotiating delivery times. When I was in sales, when I first was in sales, I wanted to promise everything tomorrow because I wanted to show that I was good and I'll take care of them. But it's important to ask people, I know you want this as soon as possible. When do you really need it? Like, what is your deliverable from this information? And can we work backwards from there so that we can negotiate something that works for everybody? The other duration boundary is bounding conversations. That's a mouthful. When someone calling and say, do you have time to talk? To say, I only have 5 minutes, or at 4 o'clock tonight, I will only have 15 minutes, and to keep to that. So you train people first off that you only have so much time, and you make sure that, especially if you're a pleaser, you set that boundary so you can move forward. So those are our 3 types of boundaries. And let's just refresh on why they matter. Well, self-care, as we talked about, self-respect. If you respect yourself, you train others to respect you, and you increase your effectiveness because you're focused on the things that you're supposed to be doing when you need to do them, and not having too much spread too thin and nothing being done well. So let's look at the flip side of that. What happens when you don't set boundaries? Well, stress, you'll get burnt out, probably some resentment or frustration or anger. Your quality would drop because, again, too much, not doing anything well. Your health might suffer. You might not eat well, you might not exercise, you'll have trouble sleeping. Relationships suffer. I was often that person that would be out to dinner and I had to have my phone out because of my job. Sorry, my boss might call. And basically what I was telling people I was out with, that there is something more important than them at that moment. Now, once in a while that can happen. Ahead of time, you can say, I apologize, I have to have my phone out. But when it's a chronic habit, that's when you know you're having trouble setting boundaries. So why are we scared to set boundaries? Well, we don't want to be looked at as difficult, or we're lazy, or we're not a team player, or we're not committed, or we're flattered to be asked and valued. I just recently got challenged with this one. This amazing organization I'm part of asked me to run one of their monthly calls, and I couldn't. I do a lot of pro bono work in my time, and I didn't see how this helped my business in the moment. I have a lot of things on my plate, and I just said, thank you. I'm very flattered to be asked. Right now, this isn't the time. If you need help on this in the future, please approach me again. It might be a better time then. The other thing, we have trouble setting boundaries if we worry there's repercussions if we say no. Some of those we talked about on top. And the last one, which a lot of women have trouble with, is countered how we're raised. We're supposed to be generous. We're supposed to be helpful. If you can do something to help people, you do. But remember, just like on an airplane, you still have to put your mask on first before you help somebody else. So you have to decide if any of these things are going to prevent you from putting your mask on first. What else are we scared of? Well, sometimes I had a client that their only value was being available all the time and didn't realize it wasn't their availability, it was the quality of work that made them valuable. We self-sabotage because sometimes we're more scared of success than we are of failure, and that's a whole other talk. Sometimes we're best friends with being overwhelmed and we don't know how to break up. We're just used to being in crisis mode all the time. And other times this can be communication. We want to set the boundaries and we don't know the words, and we have to figure out how to communicate in a way that we feel confident to set those boundaries. Now let's get to the next B of self-care, which is balance. And balance isn't about both sides of the scale being equal. It's about letting everything flow and coexist together in a way that just feels good and easy. So, for example, as a founder, I did this pitch for some founders, and it's like your whole self created the company, or your whole self decided to go out on your own. And yet you neglect your whole self and running it. It deprives your company and your efforts of all of your creativity, all of you that you can bring to it. Other aspects of balance, which are me time, are getting enough sleep, good nutrition, time with family and friends, exercise, hobbies. Volunteer work's a great way, gets you in gratitude, gets you to appreciate things. And think about, what do you need to have more balance for your self-care? The other question is, how do you know when you're out of balance? What are those things you need to be looking for so you can catch yourself before you keep getting further and further? And how do I get out of balance? And then what do I need to do to get back into balance? So those are two questions that are important for you to understand. The fourth B of self-care is to breathe. And that's just really about stopping that spiral. That mental fitness we talked about is one way to do that. And the other ways is just stopping and taking a few deep breaths to slow the runaway brain. I've incorporated that recently because my brain can break a lot of world records in how fast it goes. So I've learned to slow down and take a few deep breaths and get recentered, and it's made a huge difference. So for you, how do you get back to being present? I suggested a couple ways here, but you need to think about, for you, it could be taking a quick walk, it could be putting on some music, just closing your eyes. What is it that you need to do to get back? Our fifth B of self-care are the best practices. And these are the routines you set up for yourself to integrate self-care. So one of the things to do is communicate your boundaries and needs around self-care to your friends, your families, your colleagues. It could be having a self-care community. If you have other entrepreneurs locally or virtually, find a self-care accomplice, someone that you can check in with monthly and see how you're meeting your self-care goals. And how can you engage with your community to support you and your entrepreneur community? Mouthful, guys. How can you engage with your community to support you in your journey? So self-care is something you sometimes have to ask for. And just by making people aware of it, they probably want to help you, and they probably want to develop their own self-care routines as well. So what I hope from all of this is that you think about, what is my plan for self-care? What are my beliefs that I might need to work on? The boundaries I need to set? How do I breathe? what does balance look like, and what are my best practices? So from here, think about what a new sorry guys, it's late in the day. New awareness do I have? What am I going to add moving forward? What am I going to be what am I going to remove? And lastly, what am I grateful for? Because gratitude is a huge part of self-care. So if you go to idaretobeaware.com, I'll get you a link so you can figure out what your saboteurs are, and I'll follow up with some emails on how you can start developing your mental fitness. So thank you for your time. Keep in touch. Here's my contact information, and I look forward to hearing from you on how this might have helped you with your self-care journey. Take care. Bye-bye.
An interesting presentation on a lesson we all need to learn with regards to self-care.
Yeah, and valuable
Maybe you're
takeaways
muted.
as well.
I know you're saying something, Jerry, but we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I said if we aren't taking care of ourselves, we have no ability to take care of others. It really comes down to the best we can do outside of ourselves is by taking care of ourselves inside. And I'm going through a little thing right now where I'm in a home where it's a large home, but there's a lot of us living here. And I was telling Joseph, I don't have anywhere to write. I need a place to put a desk that I can write without interruption. It's something I need right now. You know, I have all this stuff going through my head and it needs to come out in the computer. But I said, if I sit down at the table downstairs, there's people coming and going, and it's great to be with such a great family. But in order to get that done, I've got to figure something out, and I will. That's my goal this week.
Just to carve out that little space.
Yes, yes. Well, half the time, some of the kids are with their other parent, and so I could take over one of those bedrooms. But then when she's here, I need to get out of her space. I've been kind of doing that, trading off, doing the humanitarian work in the boys' room when they're not here. And some nights I'm in there sewing and they're sleeping.
You're figuring it out, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. You got to figure things out. What,
Good morning.
I don't want to not do these things. So I just figure out and be grateful for the space I have.
Yeah.
For the writing, I have to figure something a little bit more. I'm thinking about adopting the laundry room. Laundry room. Nobody goes in there.
Yeah, true.
I can tell them, okay, from these hours to the, hey, that's not a bad idea. It's a pretty big laundry room. But she makes such good points about the steps we need to take care of ourselves. And I'm grateful that I'm at this point in my life because in my earlier years, I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't physically taking care of myself, mentally taking care of myself. I was doing for everyone else and not refilling my glass. And it sure
takes its toll.
It makes such a difference when you are. It makes facing challenges so much easier when you're not feeling icky inside. I mean, when you're not feeling bad inside, things that come from the outside don't affect you as much. Yeah. I mean, your emotional and your mental state is so much better. And if someone needs help, you're able to help them better.
Yeah. And you're right. As much is the word to use. It doesn't affect you as much.
Right.
It will still affect you, but the impact is less.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you have your own stability, you know who you are and who you stand for and what you stand for. There's certain things that just don't affect me, because I know who I am.
Yeah.
So the 8, did she call them the 8? What did she call them? The different voices, the judge, the saboteur,
yeah,
the sage.
I let go of those guys a long time ago. The
You did.
And yeah, I've been working on this diet for the last week, and I've been doing super good. And then we had the celebration today, and the family was all having ice cream. I thought a little thing of ice cream isn't going to be that bad. And then afterwards, I thought, okay, that I know better. So I called my son-in-law, he's my accountability partner.
Yes.
And I told him what I did, and he said, okay, it's a new day. We're starting fresh. Let's start all over. And I'm like, and today I feel totally confident that I can continue to do this. I'm not gonna tell myself I'm an idiot and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was ice cream. It's not the end of the world. Yes. But he explained the program a little bit more to me, which made me have a little bit better understanding. And then today I've been getting recipes. I'm like, oh, I am okay now. I think it was the not knowing exactly what I need to do next.
Okay.
And so now I'm getting all this good information, and I'm feeling like
You're in a good place again.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. He's telling me that if I stay on this for 2 solid weeks without cheating, that I will have so much energy. And that's what I'm looking for, is I want my energy level to be stronger. And so today I feel really good. So I don't know.
Okay. So what are you eat? Is there anything specific you've cut out?
Well, no, it's a keto. I'm on the keto liquid diet right now. It's a full-on keto diet. Which a keto diet is supposed to clear up your brain. It's supposed to be good for your heart. It's supposed to be good for how the theory behind it is. You drink these shakes, 3 shakes a day. I'm not supposed to be eating any food. So 3 shakes a day for the first week, and then after that, eat 1 meal a day. But it has to be a keto meal, which is high in fat and high in protein, no carbs. And then after the second week, your body starts taking your own fat and turning it into energy.
Turning that into energy.
Because you no longer have sugar in your diet. And the sugar gives you false energy. You know how that is. You eat a little piece of candy.
Everything.
Yeah. So it's the first time I've ever done something like this. And I am hopeful that it's because I know that, turning 70 was a big deal for me. And I still want to be here when I'm 100. When you call and ask me those questions you're asking everybody, when you're I want to be sitting on that front porch with my grandchildren, looking back on my life.
I love it.
And
it is possible. We just have to take care of ourselves.
Right.
It is possible. You're right.
I
Only limitation is us.
Yeah. So I
love it.
Enjoyed her presentation. That was awesome.
Absolutely awesome. So who do we have next, ladies? Who's next on our program?
Caitlin Billings.
Caitlin, yeah.
Do we have her bio?
We should have. Did you not find it in the downloads?
No.
I have not received.
All right, go on to the next one. I'll look for that one in the meantime.
Well, I don't have any other bios. So
even Diane Allen?
I don't have any of those. Let me look. And did you email me something? No, nothing else came. So.
All right, I'll give you Diane Allen, and I'll get Caitlin's in a second. This is Diane.
Okay.
We have had Diane before. She is that amazing musician. She got in touch with me on LinkedIn the other day, telling me about some developments with her music and her work. She's really doing some amazing stuff with helping people to get into their flow.
Nice.
And the flow state comes when you are immersed in what you're doing to a point where you forget what it is that you're doing.
It comes natural.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so Her bio, I'll give you a few more words there, Jerry.
Okay.
So Caitlin is the next one, Ruth, I need to find.
Yes, Caitlin. I think those are our
Thanks,
last two.
Fabulous. Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready to read Diane Allen. She, her, beyond engagement. Keynote trainer, coaching, creating teams who feel whole, happy, and fulfilled with their work. As I work with organizations throughout the country, what I consistently see are conversations centered on engagement, where I hear some versions of the same question. How do we create an environment where our team members want to bring their best to work? But what most people don't realize is that everyone has a different motivation for why they feel their best during an activity. Once you know how to connect what your people love to do with what they do for work, everything changes. It's with great pleasure that we invite Diane to the table.
Thanks, Jerry.
You're welcome.
You ready, Ruth?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Billings, and I am located in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm 45 years old, and I wrote a memoir detailing my experiences as a mother, as a woman, as a mental health clinician, and as a mental health patient. The memoir begins with me in an office, a mental health office, being told that for the first time in my life, I was about to be hospitalized in a psychiatric.
Am I playing the wrong video?
It's the correct video. Why did you stop it?
Wasn't that Diane that you read out? Was that Caitlin or Diane?
Oh, no. That's Caitlin. You're playing the wrong video. You're right.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm glad you spotted it because I missed that.
So we're playing Diane. Okay. How about I share the screen? Why?
That helps.
Why is Diane and Comfort on the same video?
It shouldn't be. What are you saying?
I think I've got because this is Comfort, right? Share.
I can't see anything.
Can you see?
Yeah, just go forwards. Maybe I see what happened. It's just the banner that was not corrected. So just go back. Yeah, start there.
My name is Diane Allen, and I'm known as the Own Your Potential speaker and violinist. I'm 58 years old, and I live in Bend, Oregon. It is such a privilege to be able to speak to you today and to be able to speak at a number of different conferences. And I speak about the positive psychology of peak performance, which is known as the flow state. And I'll share a little bit more with you about what the flow state is in just a minute here. But I remember when I was young, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and my parents were very active in the cultural scene, and they took us to see the Cleveland Orchestra. And I remember being so small that we would go to these concerts, and I would sit in a chair, and the chair would just fold back up on me because I couldn't, it wasn't heavy enough or big enough to hold the seat down. So the orchestra would play, and I remember sitting there and feeling the force of the music pinning me to the back of the chair and finding it just so incredibly exhilarating. And when my parents asked me, well, which instrument do you want to play? I told them, well, I want to play the violin. So fast forward, I'm about 15 years old, and I'm in my bedroom blasting the music. And no, I'm not listening to rock and roll. I'm listening to a violin concerto. And in my imagination, it wasn't as if I was relegated to being a rank and file member of the orchestra. I was having this full-on fantasy of being this soloist, standing center stage, pouring the core of my soul into every note that I played. But when I began to pursue a degree in music, I found out that playing in an orchestra, being one of those rank and file members, was actually really fun. It was the environment where I would just lose myself in the music. Time would go by and I wouldn't even notice it. I would be so immersed in the activity, ideas and insights would come in from out of the blue. Things would come together with a sense of ease. The more I got into the music, the more I'd get out of it. And I experienced incredible joy and fulfillment. So, of course, after that kind of an experience, which I would find out later, I was getting into my flow state. This is the positive psychology of peak performance. Being in flow where you lose all sense of time and it's just an incredibly rewarding experience. So naturally, I decided, well, I should get into a professional symphony orchestra. And after graduating with my New York City violin training, I would show up, check in, and make my way to the warm-up room. Only all of my competitors would be in there at the same time warming up. It was so cacophonous. So I'd find my own little spot, take out my violin, I'd start to get ready. And about 45 minutes later, I would hear them say, Diane Allen, next. So I'd leave the noisy warm-up room, I'd step out into the hallway, and it's so quiet, all I could hear is the buzz in my ears and my heart beating. So I'd walk out on stage up to a solitary music stand, line of judges sitting in a row. What a nightmare! I've been seen at my worst. My high skill level, how I just played, and the gap in between. It's like I've been seen in public looking like this. This was such a far cry from my imagination of being the soloist, pouring the core of my soul into every note of music that I played. Audition anxiety? Really? Live a life with my music trapped inside of me? Well, I don't know what happens to you when you're faced with being influential under pressure, but I started out by completely losing my cool. And it ended up being a 10-year journey. 10 years of trial and error, trying to figure out how I could be my best. How can I thrive when I'm outside of my comfort zone, like taking these auditions? So that full 10 years of trial and error, I had this moment. It was after trying so hard to get into professional symphony orchestras. I was actually playing in freelance orchestras, which didn't pay well. I was scrounging to teach violin students to make ends meet. And I saw this ad, and it was for a violin teaching job in Central Oregon. So I sent in my resume, we scheduled the interview, only I had just given birth to my son. I hadn't practiced in weeks, and I was sleep deprived. So I'm at the audition. And as luck would have it, from out of the blue, I find myself going to that place where I lose all sense of time. I feel one with the activity. I am so immersed in the music that underneath my fingers, it's like the violin is singing by itself. I was having the same kind of flow state moment that I know I have when I play in these orchestra situations. Only this time, I was doing it in the heat of the moment during an audition, and I was so grateful. The kiddos that I was teaching, they were responding really well to my spontaneous creative solutions. In the room were the students, the parents, there were teachers there were musicians there, and to my surprise, the conductor from the local symphony orchestra. The day-long marathon, it felt like it went by in 5 minutes. And at the end of the day, they offer me the job on the spot, and I say yes. It was December 1997 when I was playing in freelance orchestras and scrounging for violin students to make ends meet. But in January 1998, I was welcomed with a full roster of violin students, and I was hired to sit first chair of this Central Oregon Symphony. This was such a rewarding time in my life. I was able to wake up all my dormant skills and put them to good use in my role with the orchestra. And I noticed that the more I would get into the music and the more I would get into the flow state, the more my students would. And the more I would get into the music and into my flow state, the more the orchestra would. And the more I got into music and the more I got into the flow state, the more the audience would. So I experienced firsthand this optimal state of being and how the positive psychology of peak performance is contagious. After a few years, I knew that I could always just get into the music, but I was in this situation and I realized, you know what? I need to make sure that I can always get into it. So I came up with a system to guarantee that I could always get into the music and into my flow state. And those are the steps that I share on my TED Talk. And these are the steps that I share in my workshops when I work one-on-one with people, helping them to tap into their creativity and their greatest and deepest levels of confidence. So I began to fall in love with public speaking. You can blame YouTube for that. I started making YouTube tutorials. And I was training as a speaker, and I started phasing out the teaching and the orchestra playing and doing more and more speaking. A lot of my friends said, Diane, can't you marry the violin with the speaking? And it took me a while, but I finally was able to figure out a way to bring my passions together. And I think it's fascinating how here I am decades later, standing here with you today, center stage, pouring the core of my soul into every word I speak and every note of music that I play. It turns out that in my role as a speaker, I have become the soloist of my childhood fantasy. That was a flow state moment when I was a youngster, imagining myself being the soloist on stage. And flow state moments, when we have these fantasies, these wild ideas, they're not for us to shut down, brush under the rug, and discredit. These ideas that come from out of the blue that seem like pipe dreams or daydreams, they're actually a window for you to see what you are truly capable of. Flow is the gateway to your highest potential.
Wow.
Yes, that one gave me goosebumps.
Wow.
That's a lot of talent.
You just wanted to keep playing, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
She's great. Oh,
She is.
wow.
And what a fun way to do her presentation. What a fun way to do a TED Talk.
Yes.
Her talent and I mean, it's like twofold. Her speaking ability is amazing, but then when she has the music to it, I got goosebumps. It really.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, I wish I could stay in that zone for long.
Yeah. Well, I love violin music anyway. I have grandchildren that play the violin, so I just love that music, and she is something. I love the picture. I love and cracked up at the picture. It looked like she was skydiving. Her face was all
Yes.
That was funny. But she added enough humor and enough other things in it. And then on top of it, that performance just was phenomenal. Love it.
She's wonderful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So we are on our last speaker.
Okay, I have Caitlin's information.
Please.
I went ahead and took a picture of it so it's easier for me to read.
All right.
Okay, so Caitlin Billings lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with her family. A licensed clinical social worker in the state of California, she specializes in treating complex trauma and currently provided clinical supervision for 2 Bay Area nonprofit organizations. After initially receiving her undergraduate degree in dance and movement studies from the Antioch College in 2000, her desire for a better understanding of the human psyche and to inhabit social change drew her to graduate level clinical social work. She received her MSW from Cal Poly Humboldt in 2008. Over the course of her career, Caitlin has worked, next page,
with court.
Okay, I got it. With court-mandated groups for domestic violence, offering partial hospitalization programs, substance use programs, residential and rehabilitation services, family support services, and severe, survivor, thank you, of physical and sexual trauma. Wow. I have heard Caitlin before. I really look forward to hearing her again. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin. Share.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Billings, and I am located in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm 45 years old, and I wrote a memoir detailing my experiences as a mother, as a woman, as a mental health clinician, and as a mental health patient. The memoir begins with me in an office, a mental health office, being told that for the first time in my life, I was about to be hospitalized in a psychiatric facility because I was considered a harm to myself. The book opens there, and it really pulls you into the fear, panic, and shame that I felt, because as a mental health professional, I really felt that I should have known better, that I should have known how to deal with my problems, that I should have sought help when I exhibited post-traumatic stress symptoms, and when I began to take an antidepressant medication and things didn't get better, things got worse. I should have known, but I didn't, because I'm human. And so my book begins actually with me as a child. And early on in my childhood, I was adopted by my stepfather. What this meant was that in the early 80s, when I was 4 or 5 years old, we didn't talk about adoption the same way that we do now. Nowadays, kids receive a book about their adoption. They have supportive therapy. Their family comes up with a family story about how you came to be part of our family, or how our family came together as one. And back in the early 80s, that just didn't really exist, or at least it didn't exist for me in a rural county, in a rural town in far North California. So my family, my mother, my stepfather, and my 2 younger siblings and I, we just made the best of it. And what that meant for me was that unfortunately I felt different. I felt like I didn't quite fit in. I felt sadness and actually shame that my birth father had left and, signed his rights over to my stepfather. The fact that my stepfather adopted me is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I will forever be grateful to him for raising me literally as if I was his own. What happened for me, though, was because we didn't know how to talk about it. All of my feelings of sadness and grief over having lost my biological father, my birth father, didn't get processed. And so I had this father wound, for lack of a better word, that really began to shape me and who I was and my understanding of myself. And I think that's really where my desire to fit in and to kind of pull life off perfectly really began. So fast forward, in high school, I actually graduated high school. I did pretty well. I did a lot of theater and I sang in the choir and I had really good friends. And I decided, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was 17 years old. I decided to take a gap year in Chiapas, Mexico. And I went to Chiapas, and it was late 1994, the year of the Zapatista uprising and rebellion. And it soon became very clear that Chiapas was not a safe place for me to be as a 17-year-old foreign exchange student. So I was moved to the Yucatan Peninsula. I lived in Merida, and I began to feel very depressed. I think it was just a series of many things. I missed home. I missed my friends. I inexplicably began to gain weight, which had never happened to me before. So that was shocking. And as the year wore on, my sense of self wore down. And I found myself at a party in Mexico with a bunch of kids. Everybody's drinking. And I found myself in an unwanted sexual encounter with a young man there. And again, at this time, I didn't have language for consent. I didn't have language for understanding that beyond what I understood, which was no means no, my generation hadn't yet really come into our own to talk about what consent means, what women's rights are, what date rape is. That was all just really starting to come to fruition. And so I went along with this person and was able to get myself out of the situation, but not without some unwanted sexual interactions. And so what ended up happening was I had kind of a complete breakdown. I felt so ashamed and so dirty. And like, I told this person no, and it happened anyway. And I was very confused about, was it my fault? Was it their fault? I didn't know. All I knew was that I felt like a complete and utter failure. I came home and I started therapy for the first time in my life, which was a really, really powerful experience. And actually, that person is why I chose to be a therapist today. Her effect on me was amazing. And she really empowered me to understand that, no, it wasn't your fault. You did not consent to this, and you did what you needed to do to get out of it. But I still held a lot of shame about that experience. And I think because of that, and also because my depression continued, I began to experience restricted eating. I mentioned earlier that I had gained some weight while I was in Mexico. And when I got home, I tried to control that by losing weight. And I went too far and I lost too much weight. And by the time this was all realized, I was in the throes of an eating disorder and having a really hard time getting myself out of it. So that went on. I went to college with the help of my therapist. She made a suggestion about a private college that she had attended and suggested that I check it out. And I did, and I went, and it was an amazing experience. And I really did find healing and recovery while I was there through the form of theater and dance. I had done theater in high school, and in college, I found a holistic dance program that really welcomed me, not for my technique in dance or anything else like that, but for what I was bringing as a person, as an essence, as my passion to express myself, which has always been something that I have loved to do. So while there, I made several dance pieces about what had happened in Mexico, about my struggle with myself, to accept myself, et cetera, et cetera. And I really got to a stable place. After graduation, I moved back to Northern California, to the San Francisco Bay Area, and met my husband. We moved north. I attended college to get my Master's of Social Work degree. He got a teaching credential. We had 2 beautiful children, and things just seemed to be moving along swimmingly. I was like, okay, I got it figured out. Yeah, the past was really difficult, but I've met my birth father now, and my adoptive father and I are getting along so much better. I've given him grandchildren. I've got a career and a higher education. I'm golden. So, being in my late 20s, early 30s, I still didn't really understand that it's not like you just get over your childhood and then the rest of your life is great. That being in this world is really about suffering. That's part of the human existence. And the longer you are alive, the more suffering you're going to endure, because it just comes with life. So I learned that the really, really hard way. By being held up at gunpoint in my San Francisco Bay Area neighborhood when my dog had escaped from the house, and I was chasing after him, trying to catch up with him. And I was about a block away from my house, carrying my dog back, and I heard something. I didn't know what it was. It was like a very soft noise, and I turned around, and it was a young man pointing a gun at me, very close to me. It's amazing to me that I didn't sense that he was there before I did turn around. And we kind of had a standoff. I put the dog down. I showed him, hey, I don't have anything to give you other than my dog. Please don't hurt me. Please don't do this. And there were really several moments where I wasn't sure if he was going to shoot me, because we just stood there and didn't really say anything to each other, and he just had the gun out. So I took a risk. I took a chance. He looked at the dog, and at that moment I ran back to the house. Fortunately, the dog chased after me. We got inside, and we were able to hide in the bathroom and call law enforcement to make sure that this person wasn't lingering in our neighborhood or would return. That was another trauma that, just like the situation in Mexico, sent me kind of into a downward spiral. So now I was embarking on a second downward spiral. Speaking of dogs, that's my dog barking, probably at the chicken that lives on our deck. Anyway, this trauma caused me to have a downward spiral after being held up at gunpoint. And it was only several months of me not getting treatment, me exhibiting post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, and ignoring them, because I felt that I should have it together. I should, I'm a mental health professional. I know what to do. I'll do some breathing exercises. I'll talk to my friend, and, I'll just get over it. I'll just move on. And I didn't get over it. Things got really much worse. And ultimately I ended up at my doctor's office, in tears. I wasn't able to work by this point. I was frightened wherever I went. I was having flashbacks, not only of the young man with the gun, but now that they were morphing into kind of these hallucinations of men with guns around every corner. So it was a really, really difficult place to be in. So my doctor said, well, let's put you on an antidepressant. You know, you have a history of depression. You're clearly depressed. And I was like, great, sign me up. I just want to end this hell. And what happened is the antidepressant didn't do what it was supposed to do. It actually did the opposite. And I began to have wilder mood swings than I ever had in my life. And what was particularly disturbing about these mood swings was that now I was having suicidal thoughts out of nowhere. I had never had suicidal thoughts in my life. I had had thoughts of wanting to harm myself, but I had never had thoughts of death. And now I was having them every day. I would be driving in my car and suddenly here would come another one. And it was, you know, crash your car into the car in front of you, just out of nowhere. And this increased and increased. And simultaneously, sometimes I would find myself kind of in love with everything and everyone in my life. Things didn't make a lot of sense. And I was constantly like, well, it's either working really well or there's something really wrong with me. Flash forward a little more in time, and unfortunately, things got so bad that I found myself in a dissociated episode, and I found a straight razor and was methodically cutting at my wrist in the bathroom while my husband was in the shower, sort of not really knowing where I was or understanding what was happening, while at the same time being very aware. It was a very bizarre experience. That was when I was first psychiatrically hospitalized. And during that hospitalization, I worked with a really interesting and I think astute psychiatrist, now looking back. And he said to me, clearly, you've got trauma. Clearly, there's depression. And clearly, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, antidepressants, are not good for you. They're not good for your brain. And what I suspect is happening is more of a subclinical bipolar disorder, and that you would do better off with a mood stabilizer to help you through this difficult time. And it's possible that you will continue to need this as your life goes forward. And I was like, okay, great, I'll try it. And pretty quickly, I was sure that he was wrong and I was fine. And thus began several years of going on and off psychiatric medication, a couple more involuntary hospitalizations, and a very strong denial on my part that I had bipolar disorder or anything other than trauma. Eventually, I realized that the only way to manage my depression was to take medication, and was to really just embrace the fact that this was my life now, that I could work, I could have a career, I could have a family, and my illness did need to be treated, that I couldn't treat it on my own, and it was okay to need help. Around that time, my eldest daughter, at the time, turned 12, and she began to exhibit signs of anorexia, of eating disordered behavior. She began to cut herself, doing self-harm behavior. She began to have suicidal thoughts, all unbeknownst to myself and my husband. We didn't see the signs. We thought, well, you know, she's growing up. She wants to spend a little more time alone. She seems happy. Yeah, sometimes she doesn't eat her lunch at school, but that happens to a lot of kids. She's eating dinner at home. And ultimately, I was contacted by the school counselor and told that my daughter had actually been cutting with an intent to die by suicide. And thus began an era of me blaming myself for what was happening with my daughter. And again, it's this I didn't think that I had overtly caused this problem for her, but I also know there's a genetic link with mental health issues such as depression, particularly bipolar disorder. And I knew that I had been really depressed for several years of her childhood. And I didn't know, did that cause this for her? What effect did that have on her? And she was hospitalized a few times. And I really had to, it was like a reckoning for me of my identity as a mother, as a mental health therapist. Not only is it me, now it's my kid. What secrets to have to hide that I felt I had to hide. And then after that, she seemed to stabilize. We seemed to be doing okay. And we invited a family member to stay in our home, kind of a family member who was down on his luck. He was out of work. We had no reason to suspect that he would be problematic. And in the end, after another hospitalization for my daughter, it came out that he had sexually abused her while she was homesick a few times, and he was supposed to be out looking for a job. So again, more guilt, more questioning of like, how can this be happening? Like, okay, I get it. I've been hospitalized. I'm a therapist with mental health concerns. Now my daughter is exhibiting all of those, but now this on top of everything, this wasn't supposed to happen. Like, I had it together. I was golden. I had my career. We had our marriage. Things were going really well. Then I got held up and it all seemed to just have fallen apart. So this is the part where like, I just had to really come to terms with the fact that life is suffering. It's difficult. It's not only suffering, it's amazement and joy and passion and euphoria. And it's also mundane and sad and horrible. And we lose people, we lose parts of ourselves that we'll never get back. We have to reintegrate who we are into this new knowledge of ourselves. And we have to accept sometimes the fact that our children have been hurt or harmed.
And what an amazing story you have.
Thank you.
Very raw and very, very honest. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing with us today. You have throughout, just listening right to the beginning of your story, so many questions have come up for me as you were speaking. First of all, I didn't hear a presence of your mother. You referred to two fathers in the beginning of your story. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's interesting. I left my mom out completely. My mom actually has been one of maybe the most important people in my life. She's my biggest champion. She's always believed in me. She's the person who early on saw that my need to express myself was very great. She got me into theater. She exposed me to creative writing. She took me to a writing retreat with her when I was 10. And that was the point where I discovered that I loved creative writing. So my mom has always been there for me. And it's funny that I left her out of my story, maybe because she's always there. And I actually dedicated my book to my mom because she taught me everything that I know about kindness and empathy.
Fantastic. And then you had this advantage of being able to reconnect with your biological father as well, which is pretty special for a lot of kids. They don't get to meet their biological dads. How old were you? What was that experience like?
I met him once when I was almost 15 years old, and it was a chance meeting. It was not planned, and he wasn't planning to be there. I wasn't planning to be there. We literally ran into each other at a reunion that my mom was attending. So I did meet him very, very briefly at this reunion for a couple of hours when I was 15. which kind of made things worse because then it was like, oh, okay, I met this guy and I really don't have any communication with him. And, you know, that was really big for me to do, you know, to go through that. But when I was 22, I tracked him down on the internet and emailed him and said, hey, you know, do you have a biological daughter named Caitlin? And if so, this is her, and I would really love to meet you again and sit down with you. And I was living in the Bay Area, and he lived in the Bay Area. He'd been in California most of the time. He even lived in the rural county where I lived as a child, part of the time that I was there, and I never knew. I didn't know where he was. So yeah, I met him when I was 22, and we've had kind of an on again, off again reconnection. I think it's weird for both of us because we look very much alike. We think alike in some ways. There's just certain characteristics that are genetic and so fascinating. He did attend my my master's in social work graduation, and so I had my mother, my birth father and his wife, and my adopted father and his partner, all in attendance at my graduation. So yeah, it was very special.
That's awesome. Now, your book is entitled In Our Blood. Mental health is an issue that not many want to touch, want to talk about. And you have delved into this in a very unique way. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the title first and why you have felt that it's important for you to be a voice talking about mental health issues.
Yeah, so the book is called In Our Blood, which is kind of a double meaning. So it refers obviously to the blood link between my daughter and I, and the genetic link that I struggle with so much in the book, worrying that I did this to her, essentially. And it also is a reference to the fact that we both self-harmed, and blood comes up in the book. So it's kind of a nod to both of those things. Remind me of the second question. I've forgotten it.
So the second question was, why do you think it's important for you to be a voice for mental health? Not many people want to talk about this subject. Why have you stepped into these shoes?
The story had to be written. Whether or not I chose to publish it, it first had to be written. I had to get it out on paper. And the more that I shared with my small writing group of memoirists, we were all writing memoirs at the time, the more they told me that what I had to say was extremely important and would help other people. And at first I was like, yeah, you're supposed to say that, you're part of my memoir group. But really, they meant it. And I began to strongly consider what it would mean to put a face to someone with a serious mental health diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And I chose to come forward in part because I think we have such a huge stigma around mental health in the first place. And if you don't know, many mental health professionals are actually some of the most stigmatizing people, unfortunately. And I say that as a mental health professional. I think there's just something about it. We want to distance ourselves. And that was part of my denial process for a long time. But I think ultimately it was about saying, you know what, I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of feeling like I'm carrying around all these secrets. I'm tired of feeling like I'm kind of living a lie, that I'm somehow inauthentic. I'm tired of feeling like a failure because I'm not, and having a mental health condition does not mean you're a failure. So it was all of these different pieces of like, I just want to shed this, shed this skin of feeling like so bad about myself as a mother and a therapist and a human, that I didn't deserve to feel that way about myself. I really had done nothing wrong. And nobody, as a kid is like, yeah, when I grow up, I want to have some mental health problems and I want to be psychiatrically hospitalized and some trauma thrown in there too, just to really, stir things up.
We don't choose the hand we're dealt in life, but there's so much ignorance around mental health issues. And I think the more people share and talk about their experiences, the more people get to understand for stepping into these shoes and coming forward. Now, there's a lot of issues going on in the United States at the moment. As you know, the Herstory movement is all about women's issues. What is the country is going backwards into dark ages in some of the policies that are being implemented right now?
Yeah, I didn't hear part of your question, but I think I know what you're asking, which is what is my take in terms of what my country's Supreme Court has begun to decide about the rights of women, and we'll see how it goes, but potentially anyone other than straight, white, privileged people. So to back up a little bit, what I think about the recent Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe versus Wade, which in our country, as long as I've been alive, has been the law of the land and has been a protection against a protection for women against what at a time before Roe versus Wade was passed was causing untimely deaths of women, because we can't outlaw abortion. Abortion is going to happen. So we can accept that and make it safe and accessible, or we can do what has been done and pretend that it's not happening and women are going to die. And in fact, I'm sure that that has already begun. As a woman myself, and as a person who, I've worked with women quite a bit in several different capacities. It's really frustrating. I'm really angry about it. And I think I'm trying to put something coherent into words here. You said the dark ages, and part of what's coming up for me is that, a lot of our mental health practices started in the dark ages and were then brought forth into the last century by the majority being, again, privileged white men. And many of women's medical conditions or conditions of being traumatized because, being treated as second-class citizens or worse, was pathologized. And women were treated for conditions such as hysteria, which at the time they believed was rooted in the uterus. So that's just one piece. That's one component of what women have had to undergo regarding mental health care, quote unquote, in my country, and I'm sure in many other European or European colonized countries. We are going backwards, and it's scary, and I'm really fearful. I'm fearful for not only the lives of the sisters that I have, or the people who have uteruses who need reproductive health care in this country, but also for our tax system, for our foster care system, for our prison system, because if we are really going to be locking women up and accusing them of murder how are we going to care for them? Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for their meals and their lodging? Who's going to pay for, the therapy that their family's going to need because now they've lost their wife and their mother or their sister or their aunt? There are so many ramifications of this, and it just keeps reverberating. And so, yeah, for me, there is this sort of link with mental health care because I think about that more, about kind of where did this start in terms of women's mental health care. But it's really women's health care across the board. And it's extremely concerning that this is just the beginning, potentially.
Yeah. It's interesting to watch from a distance from where we are. So let me take you into the future as my last question for you today. If time was an illusion, and I could teleport you into the future, you're now 100 years old, and the present you could go and have a conversation with this wise woman who's reached this age, has done things in her life to change the world in whatever small ways she can. If you could have a conversation with that future you, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you ask from her?
From future me?
This life and to... Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think the first thing would be to tell myself that you're right. Life doesn't get easier. But I think you're also on the right track by some of the practices that you're putting into place for yourself today, by focusing on taking care of your body, eating nutritious food, beginning to have a spirituality that understands suffering and begins to look at it in a different way, as well as practicing radical acceptance, which is my constant refrain these days. I think future me would say, right on. That's what you need to be doing. Keep doing it. I think the second thing would be that nothing is perfect. Because even though I wrote a memoir about embracing myself and my imperfections, it continues to plague me, and it plagues many of us. Many of my clients who I see in therapy, many women I know. And so I think future me would say to me, don't forget, it's complicated and you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to prove yourself at every turn. And keep focusing on catching yourself when you're doing that. Because it doesn't mean that you can't have ambition and that you can't have dreams. But it means that, yeah, not everybody's going to like your memoir. Not everybody's going to think it was a good idea that you wrote it. Some people might just not like your writing style. But you did it. You set out to do it and you did it. And if you keep pushing forward and keep choosing to do things that, even though you're scared and even though it is imperfect, the second half of your life is going to be incredible. And it's going to be full of hurt and joy and suffering, just as the first part of your life has been. But now you've got some tools and some skills.
I love it. You really are reminding us today that we are all perfectly imperfect. There is no such thing as a perfect human being. We have our flaws, we have our struggles, and it's how you just manage to wake up every day, do what you're going to do, and succeed in what you're aiming to bring into the world. And with regards to your book, I'm a book writing coach. I share with my clients the reality that there's a 33% pull to anything you'll do in life. 33% of people will love every single word you write. 33% of people will hate it. Be prepared for the haters. And most of them, you will be shocked, are your closest friends, your family, your relatives. And then 33% of people just don't give a damn, they're just indifferent. So when we write, when we speak, we know the 33%. And those are the people we're writing for, and they will appreciate everything you do. So a beautiful reminder again to some of my clients who step on the world stages as speakers, my clients who write books and share their stories. That's the golden rule to putting yourself out there. Your 33% is out there waiting to hear your book, to read your stories. Just have that in mind and remain perfectly imperfect for the rest of your life. Thank you so much, Caitlin. This was an amazing interview. You brought up a lot of subjects that are pivotal in our lives right now. Mental health is a big issue that is not discussed enough. So I commend you for stepping into these shoes and sharing. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. I will be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Gertrude.
Hey, Jerry.
Hi.
Wow.
Yeah, she's been through a lot.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom some of the stuff she had to face.
And especially you know what's amazing is that she was a mental health, or she worked in the mental health section in health, and now she became the patient.
Yeah.
And then there's just a lot happening with her and their daughter.
Yeah. Well, if I understood correctly, I thought the mental health issues were before she got her degree, because I think she had it as a young person, and then must have decided that was the interest. But it was before she was in that field before her daughter faced it.
Yes.
And then finding out what happened with her daughter, that's tragic.
Yeah.
But at least they have each other and they're working together, and
yes,
we can heal from
healing together.
Some pretty harsh things. So
wow,
healing is important.
It is. So that's how we end the day.
Sounds good. We will see you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow
when I'm available for training.
All right.
Thank you.
So thank you everybody who joined us, and we'll see you tomorrow for our day number 6. Goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.